Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Nice to see new faces. Hello, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Shalom Macon. And to everyone all over the place who is joining us, not really in the room. We haven't trained these people around here very well, that when Shabbat services start, we come in the sanctuary, but you know, we'll start without them, right, Caleb? Hope everyone is well. I'll be your solo person today. Lance is at home. When we come into the synagogue, there is a very traditional recitation that's Ma Tovu. It's actually from the Torah itself, from the book of Numbers. Ma Tovu Ohalecha Yaakov. How beautiful, how lovely are your tents, O Jacob. This was we say, prophet Balaam speaking over Israel, wanting to say not nice things, but being forced to say the good things that became prophetic. So he's sort of a prophet, right? This is a reggae version just to get us set in the mood of celebration for a little Ma Tovu. Ma Tovu Olecha Yaakov, Mizkenotecha Yisrael, Ma Tovu Olecha Yaakov, Mizkenotecha Yisrael, Va'ani
out your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, splendor of the King, clothed in majesty, that all the earth rejoice, all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, darkness tries to hide, trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? Oh, we see how great is our God. Name above all names, worthy of all praise. My heart will sing how great is our God. The name above all names, worthy of all praise. My heart will sing how great is our God. Gadol Elohai, Shiruki Gadol Elohai, Kol echad yireh, Ki Gadol Elohai. Gadol Elohai, Shiruki Gadol Elohai, Kol echad yireh, Ki Gadol Elohai. Shem me'al kol shem, אותך ראוי להלל. ליבי ישיר כי גדול אלוהי. שם מעל כל שם, אותך ראוי להלל. ליבי ישיר כי גדול אלוהי. גדול אלוהי, שירו כי גדול אלוהי. כל אחד יראה כי גדול אלוהי. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great Hashem Kito, Kito, Ki Leolam Chasdo. Hodul Hashem Kito, Kito, Ki Leolam Chasdo.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul.
worship His holy name. We sing like never before. Oh, my soul, worship His holy name. Worship His holy name. Worship His holy name. Odul Hashem ki tov, ki tov, ki leolam chasdo. Odul Hashem ki tov, ki tov, ki leolam chasdo. Ki leolam chasdo. Ki leolam chasdo.
Let's stand together, my friends.
Ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la la la. Baruch hu et Adonai ha'mevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMvorach Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam, 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 Le'olam va'ed. Ya la la.
You may be seated as we declare together, Southern style anyway, the watchword of Israel.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Blessed is the name of His glorious kingdom. Blessed is His name for all eternity. Blessed is the name of His glorious kingdom for all eternity. For all eternity. Yeshua, He is my Messiah. He is Lord of all. Yeshua, He is my Messiah. He is Lord of all. He is Lord of all. He is Lord of all. Yeah.
Let's stand together again.
Open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai, open my lips
God who is faithful throughout the generations. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Chanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avod, U'Mevi Goel Livnei v'Neihem Leman Shemo Be'achava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham. The God who is faithful to resurrect the dead. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye Metim Atah V'Rav Lechoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Metim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofech Holim, Umatir Asurim, Umkayem Emunato Lishene Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umchaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, B'nei Manatah Lechachayot Metim, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechaye HaMetim. To the Holy One of Israel, seated above the heavens. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Bimkom Ha'amakenu Tofia B'tzim Lo Galeinu Ki Mechakim Anaknu Lach Ay, ay, ay Matai Tzim Lo Betzion Bekarov Beyamenu Leolam Va'ed Tishkon Titkadal Kadash B'toch Yerushalayim Bicha L'Torah Adon U'netzach Netzachim Ay, ay, ay Ne'einu Tireina Malchutecha Kadaman Ha'amon Shirei Uzecha Al Yadei David Mashiach Tzidkecha. The God who gives us this day of rest and refreshing. Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. To the God who is restoring his presence to Zion. Baruch Atah Adonai HaMachazir Shechinato LeTzion. The God whose name is good and who grants us and who's worthy of all thanksgiving. That's what he does, and many other things. Baruch Atah Adonai Hatov Shimcha Luchanei Lechol Dor. To the God who grants us peace. Baruch Atah Adonai Havarech et Amo Yisrael B'Shalom. This is the disciples' prayer in Hebrew, but this is set to the guitar melody that Peter wrote. Right after Jesus taught it, Peter said, you know what, we could add an A minor to that right here.
Avinu Shabbat Shamayim Yitkadesh Mecha Tavo Machutecha Yeaseh Ritzonecha Kasher Bashamayim Gam Ba'aretz Elamenu Lemachar Ten Lanu Chayom Umechalanu Al Choboteinu Kar Asher Mechalnu Gam Ananu Lechayaveinu Yatimienu Lidei Nisayon Im Tazilenu Min Hara Ki Lecha Mamlecha Ve'agemura Ve'chatiferet Le'omei Olamim Amen. And for the sake of our Master Yeshua, in his merit and his virtue, may the sayings of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be favorable, be favorable, be favorable to you. Oh Lord, my rock and my redeemer. 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 Yeshua, Hu HaMashiach, Hu Adon HaKol. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, the King of the universe, who has given us the way of salvation in Messiah Yeshua. Amen. You may be seated. It is a pleasure to welcome everyone, familiar faces, new faces. What you've just experienced, just in case you were wondering what you just experienced, was a little trip through the ancient synagogue liturgy, actually starting at the temple's liturgy, sort of, and set to some modern music. But this is a song that no matter if you don't speak Hebrew or have never heard Hebrew in your life or didn't know anything about what just hit you for the past 20 minutes, you can sing this song, which has two words: Shabbat Shalom. May the peace of the Sabbath be with you. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. 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 O Davinu Chai, O Davinu Chai. O Davinu, O Davinu, O Davinu Chai. O Davinu Chai, O Davinu Chai. O Davinu, O Davinu, O Davinu Chai. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Good morning. Thank y'all so much for joining us today here in person and online. And Rabbi, thank you so much for leading us by yourself today. That was great. And we just want to lift up Lance as he is preparing to take on a new job. So, which starts Monday. Hallelujah. So be careful what you say around him because he's going to be a popo. So. We would like to welcome Lena Lasute from Long Island, New York, joining us today. Lisa Lewis from Hawaii. Janice Rugg from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the Tran family traveling somewhere in Tennessee right now. Thank y'all so much for joining us. And we have people from Manila, India, Singapore, Canada, Japan, and all over the United States joining us. It is such an honor for y'all to participate with us. Just a couple quick announcements. Flora Torah. Y'all see these beautiful flowers? So every week on the Shalom at Home page, Miranda is going to put a picture up on Thursdays or Fridays, somewhere right in there, and let you guess what they mean, and then after Shabbat's over, she's going to put what they mean on there. So y'all be sure and look that up. And tomorrow, ladies, if you've not done all your Hanukkah shopping, now is your opportunity. Meet at Temple Beth Israel at 11:30 in the back, and they might let you in. Yeah, no, they'll let you in. So because I know you're gonna have a bankroll of cash with you, so go and spend, and then afterwards lunch at the Rookery. If you plan on attending, please let Sabrina know so she can let the restaurant know how many to account for. Oh yeah. Okay, it's the Hanukkah shop at Temple Beth Israel, so lots of cool things that you won't see throughout the rest of the year or have an opportunity to get. All right, let's see, and then coming up next, men's prayer breakfast on January 5th. Guys, please attend that at all possible. A Hanukkah party, December 31st, 6 p.m. Come, enjoy. Lots of fun things. Be sure and wear your ugly sweaters. Not just your ugly, but we want the oogly sweaters. Bring them on out, guys. And bring your best latkes. We will have a golden latke contest. I hear there's a prize for that. And there will be a donut eating contest. If you would like to participate in that, let Miranda know so she can make sure we have enough donuts. And there will also be a white elephant exchange. 13 years and older, bring a gift around the $10 frame, and so that we can enjoy a good time. And we will also have a non-dairy potluck because we are doing corn dogs. So the potluck that you bring for it, no corn, no dairy, no dairy. And also after we do all that, we will have a bonfire to welcome in the new year. So lots going on then, so come and join us. But before then, on the 27th and 29th, if you got some things that need to be done around your house, let Shelly know so we can get a Hanukkah service project so we can help raise some funds for these guys. Let's see. And on yeah, it's posted on Shalom at Home. I saw it the other day. So get in touch with her, and so we can get the massive amounts of brawn that you need to get the projects done at your house. And on January 1st, the college and career guys will meet at 6 p.m. at the Jones home. So y'all come and join that for that Hanukkah party there. And I know that a lot of y'all have noticed lately that I've been looking a little dapper here lately. There's a reason behind that. Melanie's been dressing me. So anyway, and with that, at this time, I would like to call my sweetie up. So, it's not what you think. Our anniversary is not until April. My birthday's in July. So.
I don't dress him. I just make sure that his stuff is ironed if it needs ironing. So a couple of weeks ago, Richard stood up and said, if you have been here since the beginning of Shalom Macon and are getting older, that people will indulge you and they have to listen to your stories. So we have been here since almost the very, very beginning, and we are getting older. And so I came up to share a little bit with you because y'all hear Dave a lot, but you don't ever hear me. I don't have stories about $30,000 teeth, though, and I don't know many people who do. We started coming 15 years ago when it was still Nachamu Ami. Our pastor at the church that we had been attending for a long time actually challenged everybody in the church to read through the Bible front to back. And he mentioned it every week, and so we decided to do that, and we did. It took a long time, but boy, our eyes were just open to so many things. And we, like so many people who are here, we knew like something's missing. So if you read the whole story, something big is missing where we were. So it was, I would like to say everything clicked right then, but it didn't, but because I'm slow. But we were never in the warehouse with the Blues Brothers, but they started meeting here in August of 2009, and in November of 2009, Kelly Eisner worked with me in the pregnancy center, and she invited us to a Shabbat dinner right in here. And so we came, and we knew immediately when we came in that it was the place for us to be. Mm-hmm. Dave was very reluctant. I didn't know how reluctant until later. He was super reluctant to come, but he knew also. So there's a lot more to that story, and I do want to tell it. I'm going to write it out in the newsletter, send it in for the newsletter. So, Dawn, I expect you to hold me accountable for that. And also, everybody's got their story of how they're here. So we would love for you to write it down. Everybody's story is probably very unique and maybe a little bit alike, but we want to hear all the uniqueness. But I can remember in the early days sitting in these purple chairs, and a lot of times there might have been 25 people, including children, in these chairs. And it was all new. It was all new to us. And so we would just sit there in astonishment at all the things that we were learning and unlearning. And but there was just so few people. And I remember at one time, Rabbi Damien even got rid of some of the chairs. He put them in storage so that there was fewer chairs, and he put a space in between the chairs, which was really awkward because there's nowhere to sit your purse or anything. So that didn't last very long, thankfully. But I think because the sight of all these empty chairs was just sad. And I remember thinking one day, man, these fantastic teachings, but nobody, just a few of us hearing them. So that made me sad also. Like it's, once the teaching was over, it was just over. There was no recording of it very much, or definitely no videos, and definitely not a lot of people. Let's see. Oh, we did have a great core group of people who were here and good leadership. I remember at one meeting, Richard, again, you're the star, he said, man, it'd be good to get a camera. Like we could they have a camera out there that you can kind of move around so you can record some of this stuff. And we all said, oh, yeah, that'd be a great idea. And then nothing happened. So then it was another year, I think, that it got brought up again. Richard said, we ought to look into getting that camera. And we're like, oh, yeah, we ought to do that. And nothing happened again. But then it's like the Lord wanted it to happen. And so he started sending different people who were gifted in one area or another. And I'm definitely not silly enough to start mentioning names because that's always a bad idea, but you know who you are. Like one person would be super talented with this or have a dream or an idea for this and the energy to make it happen. So, and now, flash forward to now, we have 7,001 YouTube followers. Dave told me last night. People travel to come. They listen online. They want to come and join and learn and fellowship together and meet together for all these times of the appointed times that the Lord set apart. And so it's just incredible that people want to come and learn and join us. Also, so we are, let's see. So we want to definitely invite you to participate in all of the expansion that's going on and more to come. I know you've seen Rabbi Damien's video. It was very good. His vision has almost always been on target for what to do next. Like, he has these incredible ideas. He and Kelly, I know, together have these incredible ideas and are making them happen. So we invite you to participate and give. And we have a matching donor, y'all. I mean, that is amazing. Everything, if whatever you give, it's instantly doubled. That is an incredible investment in the kingdom of God. So we are giving, and we hope you will too. And I did want to tell one little more funny story about Dave. He didn't know I was going to tell it. But, we started dating about 26 years ago, and
Best decision of my life.
Well, his finances were a mess, and and I was tight and knew where every dime went and was super.
Still does.
And almost to a fault, but and one day he was particularly worried about his disastrous finances, and he said to me, can you kind of help me figure this out, because you seem to know where all your money is. And so I said, yes, I will help you figure this out, because I knew we were going to get married. He didn't know, but I did, and the Lord did. So I wanted to get him fixed.
Still working on it.
Just the money. So I said, list out everything, list out your income for a month, and list out all of your expenses. And so he did, and I looked at it, and there was one line item that was $60 or $80 or something like that was under bank fees. And I said, well, what is this? And he said, well, that's my overdraft fees every month. And I said, well, let's avoid that. Let's fix this, and then you won't have to budget that in, because you won't be doing that. So he did. But one thing he said, and this is the point of my story, not just to make you look silly, but he said, I want to give. I want to give to the church. I want to give to God. And I said, I don't really think you can do that right now. Like, you've got to get this straightened out. This is a mess. You got to get it straightened out. You get this straightened out, and then you can give. And he said, no, I want to give now. I want to do it right now. And so we added it to his budget, and wouldn't you know, it all worked out, and he had enough, and here we are. But I did want to share that story of just giving in faith. He was a new believer, and he had greater faith than I did about giving. So I want to applaud him for that.
And now my credit score is higher than
and now his credit score, that is true. His credit score is higher than mine. But anyway, I do want to invite you to give. It is worth it. You see all the things that are happening, and anyway, that's our story. So
good job.
Good job.
I have a deep, deep gratitude to those people that just stepped off the stage for having walked through thick and thin with Kelly and I and the elders, and just they are pillars of this community, so thank you for sharing. One of the things I was blessed to see someone walk in the door today that is not usually here. She has a very long travel distance to get here, and so it was really hard, but she is a friend. She is also a colleague of mine at First Fruits of Zion. She is also the director of the Brahm Center in Israel, which is First Fruits of Zion's Messianic Jewish Teaching Center. And she is also an IDF soldier. She is an organizer. She is an incredible person. And speaking of giving and what Shalom Macon is able to do with giving, one of the things we were able to do was to work through Judy Seidner to do some amazing things there in Israel. But we don't get people from Israel to come here very often. and especially people who can actually really engage a crowd. So I wanted to give Judy an opportunity to come and just say whatever she's going to say, because she's got a lot of stories to tell. Hi, Judy.
Yeah, hi.
Welcome
Really
to
good
Shalom
see you,
Macon.
Damien.
Hi.
Wow, it's awesome to see all of you guys. Thank you so much for kind of giving me this opportunity. Is this all right here? Great. All right, so as Damien mentioned, my name is Judy. It's really nice to see you, really nice to meet some of you, see a bunch of familiar faces. And it's really an honor to take a second here. This is my first time at Shalom Macon, which is really, truly my fault. I grew up in Atlanta, so I'm close in the Roswell, Marietta area, not too far. So it's really amazing to get a chance to share with you guys. So as Damien mentioned, I'm an American Israeli. I live over there in Israel. We'll get to that in a second. And I'm also an officer in reserve duty for the IDF. So we could talk about a lot of things. There's a million things happening in Israel. There's a million different sectors of what's going on. But I really just wanted to share a bit about kind of my experiences over the last year and a half, both as a civilian in Israel and also as a captain in the IDF drafting during the war. So first, a little bit of background. I was born and raised in Marietta, Georgia, mainly with my mom and my two brothers. I grew up in a Messianic setting, really incredible. I loved it. Both of my parents are Jewish. There's a whole story behind all of that. And engaging with the Messianic tradition was incredibly fulfilling for me as a child. And our buildings expanded back in the day, and that's exactly how I was able to spend so much time there and enjoy so many vacation Bible yeshivas and so many different activities as a child. Nobody's telling me to say this, but do this thing that you guys are doing. That's incredible. Keep going with that. So I had my bat mitzvah there, learned kind of just enough Hebrew for my bat mitzvah, and participated pretty strongly in our youth group. So in 2009, I graduated from Popeye out there. Some of you guys may know it. And I went on to study psychology at the University of Georgia. I love kids. My plan at the time was to go into child psychology, continue in a master's and a doctorate. But the summer between my junior and senior years of college, I took a Messianic trip. I wouldn't call it a missions trip, but a Messianic service trip to go and volunteer in Israel with a bunch of other young adults. It was 3 weeks. It was a huge deal. How many of you guys have already been to Israel? Okay, not too shabby. You guys are working on that. I trust it. I highly recommend going. I don't think I need to convince anybody that it's an incredible experience. And we learned about the biblical roots, all of these things in Israel. Now, prior to embarking on this trip, I was always really proud of my Judaism. I am the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor who came over on the Kinder transport through Ellis Island. I'm also named after her. I've always had a connection to Hebrew and observing the holidays from the way that I was raised. And this trip left a meaningful impression on me that I couldn't have, I think, experienced anywhere else but in Israel. So I worked for a year after I graduated college, saving up money, and found a friend who was also Messianic, and we moved to Israel together in September of 2014. And my initial idea was not to live there forever. I had my path, I had my direction. I was going to be studying for my GRE and come back and do all of that. The Lord has other plans, and I feel like most of you in this room know how that goes sometimes. But after a couple of months in Israel, I had kind of gotten my citizenship on the side just to do that and have that in case. And a few months later, in January of 2015, I had a really incredible experience with the Lord. And it wasn't in a worship service, and it wasn't at a conference, it wasn't on the edge of the ocean, it was at a bus stop. And I was waiting for my bus to get to Hebrew school. And it's a whole story, but for time's sake, I won't get into it. The Lord just very much captured my heart in that moment, at that bus stop, doing nothing other than standing there. And he told me very directly, I wouldn't say the audible voice of God, I'm very cautious about that, but he told me deep, deep in my soul, this is where you're to live, this is where you're to spend the rest of your life. I said, okay, because that's what we do, right? We're obedient. That's what we do as believers. So I said, okay, Lord, sounds like a plan. That was kind of rolling through my brain. Like I said, it wasn't my initial plan. And in that moment, I realized if I was going to live in Israel the rest of my life, or as long as the Lord will have me there, then I should also join the army. At the time, I had just turned 23, and it's not required at that point. Everybody in Israel, if you guys don't know, at the age of 18, drafts into the military. There are a few small exceptions, but just like people here ask, oh, like what university did you go to or whatever, over there it's like, oh, what unit did you serve in? So everybody drafts over there. But at that point, at 23, I had the option and was able to volunteer. So I kind of stumbled into the Lishkat Giyus, the draft office. I had like 2 weeks of Hebrew at that time, and I had learned that I is ani, and so I was like, ani, army. I was like it was a mess, y'all, it was a mess. But I don't know why they let me in, I truly don't. I guess I didn't look too threatening, but they let me come in, and I was able to find somebody at that point that spoke English. So despite not being fluent in Hebrew, I started basic training in March of 2016, like as a private. I went to a special training base for people from overseas. The Army knows how to implement us, people who come and volunteer who don't speak Hebrew fully. Then after completing, I have a few pictures of this. I didn't get it to us in advance, but I have them, and I can show you guys later if it's of interest. If not, you can just kind of picture these things. So after completing advanced training, I became an instructor for combat and reserve duty soldiers for search and rescue and chemical warfare. Incredibly challenging course. I've never studied so hard, specifically because the Hebrew was so difficult. And there were other soldiers complaining, oh, there are so many acronyms, there are so many things. I was like, you guys, I don't even know what these acronyms mean. I don't know how you... Anyways, by the grace of God, was able to succeed. And then less than a year later, after I was in my job, I was selected to go to an officer's course, became an officer, and served in the southern district of Israel at a base called Machne Orim, which is a couple of kilometers, a few miles off of the Gaza border in the south. So, okay, fast forward to the beginning of 2023, or the beginning of October 2023. I'm a normal civilian working for First Fruits at the Brahm Center. Incredible blessing. Next time you're in Israel, take my number, come visit us. We have a blast over there. We actually have a ton of events going on right now that we're kind of working on from afar, so it's nice. I live in an apartment with roommates. The week of October 7th, October 1st is my birthday. I was celebrating my birthday. It was Sukkot. I have a sukkah in the backyard. People are coming over and visiting the sukkah. Really, really normal. And I feel like now, looking back, maybe some of you guys feel this way if you were around for 9/11. There's sort of a before and after. You almost like, you look at yourself before, and you're like, how was I so naive? Like, how did I not know that all of this was going to happen? And we couldn't have. Maybe it was a grace that we didn't, but we really were taking for granted this very, I would say, semi-peaceful state of living. Yeah, of course, rockets in the south, those were unfortunately quite normal, but this kind of attack definitely wasn't, and we were not prepared for the terror that was about to ensue. So it's early morning of October 7th. We just wrapped up Sukkot, rolling into Simchat Torah. Of course, it's a Saturday, you guys all remember. And we're celebrating the beauty of obeying God's commandments. Many religious people aren't, using phones or doing whatever, and the news wasn't gonna spread so fast. Many people were sleeping in, of course, like myself. And then the loud sirens start. I believe because you guys are here that a lot of you guys have been following the news. I don't have to tell you too great, but my roommate runs into my room. She heard it first before I did. All of our doors and windows were closed, so she heard it first from her room. She runs in and she goes, Judy, there are rocket sirens. Like, we have to go get to the bomb shelter. So in our building, I live in an older building. It's 6 apartments. It was built in the early 80s. And so in some newer apartments, you have bomb shelters in every apartment. In ours, we just have one at the bottom of our building. So we run out the door. Everybody else is flowing down the stairs. And we head into our bomb shelter in Jerusalem. And in each part of the country, there are different amounts of time that you have to get to a bomb shelter because of the distance based on the air time of the rockets. So in Jerusalem, we have a minute and a half. Kids learn this in school. It's just like how we have fire drills here and whatever other drills they do these days. But over there, we have rocket drills. And so every kid learns what to do if they're in a car or in the house or wherever they are. It's an unfortunately sad part of our reality that I guess I'm grateful for during this war, that we're able to kind of lean on that training. But so we get down to the bomb shelter. It was a bit of a balagan, a bit of craziness there. Some of the kids were like, what's happening? It's early morning, like we're all resting. It was very unexpected. And like I mentioned, of course, different things in the south were very regular, little rockets here and there. But to hear sirens in Jerusalem was like very rare. We haven't had that for a good few years, and definitely not for something that escalated as it did. So one of the guys runs into the bomb shelter. I mean, we're rubbing our eyes. Like, we're just waking up. Half of the people are in half of their clothing, like, because they're in pajamas. One guy runs in. He's from Mada, which is the Magen David Adom. It's kind of Israel's version of the Red Cross. He goes, I don't know if you guys know this, but this is like very serious. This isn't just sirens. There are hostages. Israelis have been murdered. prepare yourself. Like, this is only ending in war. And we're all looking at him like, golly, we haven't even gotten our coffee, and now we're talking about war. This is just wild. So as you can imagine, the following few days were really the worst of our lives. The death toll kept skyrocketing. You guys saw this. Of course, I wasn't going to bring pictures or videos of that to not trigger anybody, or myself for that matter. All the images of the burned homes, the videos of Israelis screaming, families seeing each other murdered, just worse than any sort of horror movie that we could have ever pictured. And we were all kind of in shock and mourning and survival mode all at the same time. So during that time, we had known that hundreds of, if not thousands of terrorists had broken into our borders, and they were all still pressing inland when my commander, called me on October 9th, okay? 2 days later, during those 2 days, I worked on a few initiatives to organize a few things, started up a little WhatsApp group. So my commander calls me on the evening of October 9th, and she says, Judy, you gotta get over here tomorrow morning, pack your stuff, come on down. All right, let's go. Start thinking about it. I live in Jerusalem, going down south. It was usually about an hour-and-a-half drive. I start packing, kind of thinking, I don't know how long I'm gonna be there. I don't know when I'm gonna get back. I don't know. It was a bit of a mess. And then I get a call that evening from one of my friends that I had served with in active duty. He goes, listen, I have to tell you this so that you're not surprised when you get here. And my heart sinks. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, so our base was brutally attacked on the 7th. And I was like, what do you mean our base was attacked on the 7th? And he goes, yeah, they made it all the way to us. And when you get here, I just don't want you to be surprised and freak out if nobody's told you this yet. There are bullet shots through all the ceilings. There are handles on doors completely blown off. There are black marks from RPGs that the terrorists shot and blew up vehicles with. There's stains of blood on the floor that, even though they're cleaned up, they're not cleaned up. And it's just it's a war zone. And I'm thinking, my base is usually, I'm combat support. I'm not directly in combat. I didn't do that to my mom. So I'm usually on a base, one-story buildings, like offices. This isn't a high intelligence base. This is Home Front Command, which is civilians. And I'm thinking wow, this is crazy. This is a war zone. So I get there. I depart on the morning of the 10th. Waze, which is kind of like Google Maps, tells me you're going into dangerous territory, and I'm just like, I'm in Israel. What's this is so nuts to think about this as dangerous territory, but it really wasn't wrong. Because as I was driving down south, I had to stop at gas stations to check with the security forces which roads had been cleared and which roads were okay to drive on versus which ones had not been cleared yet. I kept my windows down and my music off so that I could hear if there were more siren alerts. They're quite loud, but if you have music going and stuff, you might not hear it. Anyways, long story short, not an easy day. Got to base, remembered that not only was I a soldier, but also an officer, and I really needed to also command soldiers. I needed to learn my job very quickly in the war, what that was going to look like. And it was something other than frightening. We started hearing a ton of stories about what was going on in the past few days, and it really was not difficult to imagine. There was even a 20-year-old on our base who had been shot 12 times but survived and was able to get to help, and now she's recovering. And there's a video on her and on our base it's all in Hebrew, but it's pretty crazy to watch. So anyways, this was all quite the sight. I'm going to wrap up here in just the next minute or two, but I want to say that Israel is very tiny, and you guys know this who have been there, but I believe, if I did the math right, in terms of area itself, maybe not the actual shape, but in terms of area, Israel can fit inside of Georgia between 6 and 7 times. This is a very tiny country, which means that we all know each other. Really, I don't know how to explain it. Play the Jewish geography, whatever you do, we all know each other. One of the hostages who's still there is a father of a girl that I served with in the war. One of the guys that I served with was killed on my base. My roommate is working with the sister of one of the girls who was at the beginning. Everybody knows each other one way or another, and it's not 6 degrees of separation, it's more like 2. So because of that, there's a lot of internal support, a lot of strength. And unfortunately, as Jews, we've had to do that for a really long time. And maybe that was a way of God preparing us, I don't know. But there's a lot of leaning on each other. There was a lot of support that started coming in from around the world. People praying, kids sending pictures of them holding verses. We're praying for the IDF, all these things, very sweet. And it was pretty phenomenal. And there were some really beautiful, thought-provoking, not monuments, but exhibits for the hostages, lights going up really high in the air where you could see all throughout Jerusalem, beds, the hostage beds being put inside of the city square, to be watching and praying for them. So In mid-December of last year, I finished my longer stint of reserve duty. My unit continued on. There was an active duty officer that was able to replace me. And since then, I've gone back and forth a couple of times, a week here, a week there, a couple days here and there. And this whole war is very taxing on all of us. You guys know this, being here. It's taxing on you guys. Like, Am Yisrael, the people that we all support, are being attacked. And we trust that God is going to protect us. But we also have our work to do. I think it's the same thing kind of with the kingdom. So I don't want to take up too much of our time. But I do want to leave us with a couple of points of prayer that I would ask you guys to participate with me in. And some people are like, just prayer, is that it? Like, that's all you're going to give us to help out? And I'm telling you, that is it. That is the thing that we need to be doing. And there's a million other ways to help, no problem. I'm sure you guys have talked about it here at the congregation, but never, ever, ever, if you start underestimating prayer, you know that you've fallen too far from God. So I will ask you to pray with us for 3 things, just 3 bullet points. Try to remember them. 1, wisdom for our leaders, okay? Some of the different, the mivtzaim, the different operations that we've hosted, the tasks, the missions have been out of this world. I mean, wild, the things, miracle after miracle after miracle. Maybe it would sound like the book of Acts later if we're talking about this. So wisdom for our leaders to continue working in the mission, each mission the way that they're supposed to. Secondly, protection and comfort for the families of the hostages that are still there. And of course, for mental and spiritual healing for those who have returned. So 1, wisdom for leaders, 2, for our hostage families, and 3, for our security forces. Our security forces are working day and night. People who have left their families, multiple kids, wives are basically becoming single parents for months at a time, just so that we can protect and defend the nation of Israel. So I pray that you guys would pray this with me, and be very proactive. And this is it. This is the battle that we are fighting. So thank you guys for your time. If you'd like to chat more about my journey in Israel, about October 7th and since, I'll be happy to chat with you guys kind of afterwards. So thanks for letting me join your guys' service.
I want to prepare you for the fact that Judy is a fundraiser, and she has already initiated a project that we were able to participate in, which was providing special combat boots for her unit. And I want to remind you, or prepare you, I should say, that after the first of the year, Judy has a major initiative that's going to provide military equipment to her unit. And so you're going to be, I wanted you to see her face, I wanted you to hear her story, and I want you to know what she's doing, so that when I come back to you after the first and say, here's Judy's link, and here's what she's doing, and here's how we're going to help, you're going to know. Okay? Thank you, Judy, for service, for your heart, for your passion. Kids, let's go to Shabbat school. Wow, we got a nice, intimate, small group here together, don't we? Yisimcha Elohim ke Ephraim v'hi Menashe. Yisamech Elohim ke Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah. Father, we ask for your wisdom. Wisdom for parents, wisdom for us as a community, and how about some wisdom for them as they navigate a world that is certainly changing. Father, we ask that you will protect them, give them health and prosperity and blessing. Yivrechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, yo'er Adonai panav elecha v'yihuneka, yis Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Okay, you can go find your parents and go to Shabbat school. Is Debbie teaching? Oh, Ellen's teaching. Debbie's teaching. You have a nice, relaxed day today. Melanie was talking about all those empty purple chairs. I think Romans has scared everyone off. I'm not sure. Oleoculture. Who wants to talk about oleoculture? You know what it is? You should. From last week, we talked about it. Olives, right? Olive trees. Who wants to talk more about olive trees? You were incredible troopers last week. 45 minutes about grafting and cutting and breaking and broken off and wild and cultivated shoots and every imagined thing that we can't imagine even. But we can summarize all of it from Paul's own words. Last week, I talked to you about this from Romans 11. That is true, he said. They were broken off on account of unbelief, but you stand on account of belief. So do not become arrogant, but be afraid. For if God did not spare the natural branches, neither will he spare you. I hope what I shared last week was clear, as Paul offered the refutation of the interlocutor's suggestion, which represented a critical exigency in Rome. What was that? What was the concern? That God has rejected his people, and the Roman Christ followers thinking this. Has he rejected his people? Me genoito, Paul says. The interlocutor says, but branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. In other words, Paul, there's only enough room in this town for the one of us. Jews or Gentiles, not both. An antithesis, either or, implying that Israel has to be rejected. Paul's rebuke was unapologetic. God's kindness toward you if you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you will be cut off, ekapte, removed from the tree. And we closed last week with Paul explaining, for if you were cut off from what is by nature a wild olive tree, and contrary to nature were grafted into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these who are the natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree? In other words, even if they were cut off, God can put them back. And if that is not if that's not miraculous, it's at least mysterious. And how do I know that Paul felt like this was mysterious? Well, let's conclude chapter 11 of Romans today. For I don't want you, brothers and sisters, to be uninformed of the mystery, the mysterion in Greek, so that you will not be wise in your own estimation, he says, that a partial hardening has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in, and so all Israel will be saved. Just as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will remove ungodliness from Jacob. Now, you will notice something if you're reading in Greek. Paul was very stern to his interlocutor, this single guy that he was talking to the wild olive shoot, in that rebuke. But when you read the Greek, you'll notice, even in the English, you can tell, he's back to being nice again. He's switched out of diatribe mode. There's no more second person singular, you wild olive shoot. Now he takes on the family-esque language again. Adelphoi, brothers and sisters, he says. This is his audience from 11:13, because I'm talking to you Gentiles, he says. Now he's saying Adelphoi, my brothers and sisters. And what it means when he says brothers and sisters, it means listen to what I'm saying. That you've got to get this, my brothers and sisters. Please hear me. For I don't want you to be ignorant of what's going on. I don't want you, the NASB says, to be uninformed of the mystery, so you won't be wise in your own estimation. Which should actually make one think of Proverbs 3. I bet Paul probably had it in mind. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Fear the Lord and be humble. That's Paul's message. to the potentially arrogant audience. Now, for me, I see a wonderful connection here in that Paul has just spent time explaining so far what it is that the Jewish people have missed. They've been wise in their own eyes in the sense that they're missing the miracle that God is doing among the nations. But now Paul flips the script and says, yeah, I told you about them, but guess what? I'm actually talking to you. Do not be arrogant. Do not be wise in your own eyes. These chapters are not directed toward Jews. They're directed toward Gentiles. Be humble. Do not miss the mystery, brothers. A hardening has come upon part of Israel until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. Now, I want you to pause, and I want to ask you this question. When you hear the word hardening, in particular, in the context of what seems to be the story of missing a message or being stubborn, obstinate, when you hear that, who and what comes to mind? Pharaoh, of course. Of course, Pharaoh and his hard heart. But I want you to notice something when you go back and read Romans, if you're not reading it right now. Paul never mentions Israel's heart. He only says a partial hardening has come upon Israel. There's no mention of that. That is presumed by interpreters to be Paul applying this and saying, those Jews, those old stubborn, obstinate Jews are like Pharaoh with a hard heart, and we all know how that ended. That's not what he's saying. That's not what's being said. What is he saying? What does this mean? It's very important. It's connected to Paul's previous points. As a matter of fact, this action he's pointing out, this action, this activity, this hardening, God is doing something to and through Israel for the benefit of the world. And let's read the whole section. A hardening has come upon part of Israel until the full number of the Gentiles has come in, and in this way all Israel will be saved. Paul is explaining the mystery. But it's been in plain sight all along. He's not going super spiritual on us here. He's not claiming to have some deep, mysterious insight. It's been in the scripture revealed. As it is written, out of Zion will come the deliverer. He will banish ungodliness from Jacob, and this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. He's quoting that in Romans. That is God talking about and to Israel about what he's going to do. Continuing in 28, as regards the gospel, they're enemies for your sake, but as regards election, they're beloved for the sake of their ancestors. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable, just as you once were disobedient to God, but have now received mercy because of their disobedience, so also they have now been disobedient, in order that, by the mercy shown to you, they may also now receive mercy. For God has imprisoned all in disobedience, so that he may be merciful to all. Until is a word that is used. Until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. What does until mean? I'm staying until she returns. I can't leave until this is finished. Until implies that when one thing ends, another thing happens. It's a temporary implication. So, Israel or part of Israel find themselves in a hardened position until the text says. It's a temporary state. But I want to talk about hardening for a minute. It's not a hard heart, but then what is it? And here Paul provides us one more opportunity to talk about botany, or actually dendrology, the study of trees, with another kind of tree allegory, because I know you didn't get enough of trees last week. There is a tree connection. When a tree is damaged, when a branch is broken or bent, the tree can create a mechanism to protect itself from damage that's due to the injury. A knot, a callus. Our friend Theophrastus, Aristotle's student, the father of botany, he writes about this, about the process. The process closed the wound to protect the tree. In other Greek usage, the word porosis, which Paul is using here, porosis, it's a medical term. Ancient Greek, porosis was referring to hardening of the tissue, such as the formation of calluses or the calcification of a bone after an injury. It also implied insensitivity or a loss of flexibility. Porosis, a hardening. Now, I want to lean on Nanos, Mark Nanos, Romans scholar, Pauline scholar, because I think his work, along with the others who've come after him, captures Paul's probable meaning in such a more logical and consistent way. The term porosis, translated hardness, translates as, it can mean dullness, insensitivity, being calloused rather than a rigid or unyielding hardness. And it does imply a temporary state of diminished perception rather than a total, permanent inability to respond. Nanos suggests, and this is what I want you to hear this word, that the word hardening, porosis, should be better translated, calloused. Calloused. A callus protects and it reduces sensitivity, but it is not an irreversible condition. This may be TMI, but when I go to the gym a lot, I work out. I get calluses all the time in my hands, okay? They're not there forever. If I stop doing the thing that causes the calluses, they will go away. They're there until they're not there anymore because I don't need them anymore. This state of callousness can be, in Paul's usage here, one of misunderstanding or resistance, but it's not a spiritual incapacity. Paul explains that Israel's callousness is designed actually to provoke them to jealousy through the Gentile inclusion. The condition is dynamic, but it's oriented toward restoration. Now, you contrast that with almost every translation you read, which says hardened. And it's assumed that it's talking about a hard heart, stubborn, obstinate, Pharaoh. A sense of permanence, of irreversible obstinance. But using calloused better reflects Paul's hopeful vision for Israel's eventual full inclusion and salvation. Divine mercy is at work. He frames the callousness as part of God's plan. We need to understand that for Paul, it is clear that God will save Israel. Precisely how and when that will happen is still not clearly stated, but the stage that the Romans are witnessing, what's happening with the Jews, this is required. It has something to do with the Gentiles, the ethne. The callousness is not a rejection by God, but a part of a larger divine strategy to bring Gentiles into the covenant. And it's serving a purpose in God's redemptive plan. Mercy, inclusion, rather than judgment or punishment. Now, without getting too Greeky on you here, to into all that, what we read in most translations when we see a hardening in part has happened, or a partial hardening has come. The Greek there, apomerus, can just as easily and probably should be translated as a time limit. Meaning, in other words, a callus has formed for Israel for a little while, or a callus temporarily has formed for Israel. Remember these calluses? A temporary callus has formed. Achri in the Greek. Achri sounds like Hebrew. It's not. It's Greek. Until. A temporary callus has formed for Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. Remember what we said about Israel. Something is going to end and another thing is going to happen. And here Paul says, in this way, all Israel will be saved. This is a temporary stage in Israel's history. Now, contrast that with traditional interpretations. Many traditional readings equate Israel's porosis with stubborn rejection of Jesus, when in fact, the real story seems to be focusing on the divine orchestration of salvation history here. And I want to remind you briefly of this week's Torah portion. It won't always be when people go back and listen to this. This won't line up, but it does for you. Where this week's Torah portion, we meet who? Yosef. We meet Joseph. And his brothers didn't recognize him, right? He was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery. His life was anything but grand until he was actually then exalted to the second most powerful man in Egypt, which was basically, we could say, the kingdom. And it was because of Joseph that the world was saved. The Torah says that the famine was worldwide. Joseph told his family about the dreams. He told them who he was, what was going to happen, that they were going to bow down. He told his parents, but guess what? They were calloused toward this, weren't they? His dad gave him a reprimand. They didn't see it. They didn't believe it. But through his great trials, after being exalted by Pharaoh and a nation other than his own, a family other than his own, he was acknowledged, elevated, even worshiped in Egypt, and provided saving and protection for the entire world. And then, and only then, did his brothers truly see him, and they were saved. They were saved from death, from famine. You see the parallel? It's not very hard to see, but it's important to see. Because God uses remarkable situations to do remarkable things. And this Romans thing, Rome in the first century is not the first time the nations benefited from a Jewish savior. Joseph was a savior of the world, actually. Right, David? And Paul's beautiful words that are going to carry us into the last bit of the chapter so beautifully tell the story that he wants his Gentile brothers to see and never forget that, in a sense, these unpersuaded, calloused Jews, they are their brothers. They're in it together. Their stories are absolutely intertwined. And in a sense, these Jews are suffering on their behalf. I've said many times, Paul wants the Romans to see that things are not as they appear, but to see them as they will be. The full revelation of God's plan, justice, righteousness has not been revealed. As regards the gospel, they're enemies for your sake, but as regards election, they are beloved for the sake of their ancestors, for the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. Now, I must point out, put that up there for me, Darren, 28. I must point out an unforgivable, despicably horrendous translation error that occurs, at least in the New Revised Standard Edition. In relation to the gospel, they are enemies of God, is added to the biblical text. It is nowhere to be found in any Greek manuscript. It is in other translations, in some other variation, that they are enemies of God. Please know that the words of God is nowhere. Paul did not write that. Paul did not believe that. But what does that mean? Enemies for your sake. What does that mean? Paul's message, his mission, his ministry, his gospel, it placed Torah-less Gentiles on the same level with Torah-observant Jews, which we have talked about. That did not sit well with a number of Jews.
We've talked ad nauseum about that in this series, and that represents for Paul the fact that the Jews were not coming on board. It represents a disobedience to their calling and an ignorance of what God is doing in their midst. And thus, because they are not welcoming these Gentiles into the family, it is as if they are enemies. They have to get on board with that, Paul says, and Paul believes they will. The provocation to jealousy is not to become Christians. It's not that Israel in this bent or broken off state needs to be regrafted, have their branch invigorated so that it can be reattached to a tree that is Christianity. That's not what's happening. But with all that said, and I quote Mark Reasoner here, as regards election, they are beloved for the sake of their ancestors, for the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. The present tense, 28 and 29, the present tense, they are beloved. Israel is. He does not limit the status to some past Israel or to some future glorified eschatological Israel. Present tense, they are beloved. On account of the fathers. That should serve as a very strong deterrent to any claim that God chose Israel for the purpose of creating a new people, a church. God chose Israel for its own sake. Paul believes in the merit of the fathers, the faith of Abraham, the faithfulness of Yeshua, and he asks everyone to follow in those steps. And God's gift to Israel that Paul enumerated back in chapter 9, these gifts are now declared irrevocable. They cannot be taken. Who, as I've asked before, could trust a God who takes back his gifts? Who goes back on his word, his covenant promises? That is an unfaithful God. That is not this God that Paul is presenting as the God of Israel and the God of the nations. Romans 14, 15, what then shall we say? Is God unjust? Not at all, for he says to Moses, I'll have mercy on whom I have mercy on. I'll have compassion on whom I have compassion on. Paul closes Romans by saying, you Gentiles have received mercy despite your disobedient past, and surely God's people that came before you shall too receive mercy as a result of God's mercy to you. And thus, contrary to many opinions, as Paul closes out Romans with this incredible doxology, this praise, everyone wants to say he's praising Jesus. He's not praising Jesus. He's praising God, whose plan this has been from the beginning. And it's spelled out clearly here. He's doing an amazing God-saving thing. And this we can understand why now Paul says all Israel will be saved. And this brings us to the conclusion of chapter 11. Whoa, Rabbi, whoa. All Israel will be saved? You haven't even addressed that. You can't just say that and not give any interpretation. What about the Jews? What about this? What about Jesus and the Jews? What about the sinner's prayer? What about the Romans road, man? What about the Jews? Your whole Romans thing, it's been about the Gentiles. You haven't said anything about the Jews. Rabbi, you're leaving me with the impression that the Jews don't need Jesus, or that you think there's some kind of other way, some two-way salvation. I don't even know what you think because you haven't talked about it. What about the Jews? Thought I could get out of here without talking about that. Darn, you got me. Let's talk about the Jews. Starting with, all Israel shall be saved. First of all, I think all means all, sort of. Paul is speaking about Israel, ethnic Israel, Jews, not a spiritual Israel, Not an Israel that's comprised mainly of Gentiles who now believe in Jesus and a few other Christ-following Jews. He's not talking about an Israel that's the remnant that Paul is a part of. He's talking about all of Israel. That includes those Israelites who have been broken off or bent or who are not currently pursuing God's righteousness. He's talking about Israel. And like Ezekiel, Paul is concerned or frustrated by the fact that his people, his nation, are not aligning themselves with God's plan. And yet, like Ezekiel, he's troubled, yet he foresaw a day when the nation as a whole would be restored to the land. But I need to be very clear here. You need to listen to this. It is important to recognize that within traditional Jewish thinking, by that I mean Chazal, the sages, the rabbis. I'm not talking about Yeshua followers or Messianic Jews. I'm talking about traditional Jewish interpretation. There is a difference of opinion about whether all Israel will be saved. In other words, we read verses in the ancient texts that say, all Israel has a share in the world to come. And then we read in the Talmud, the wicked, even at the gate of Gehinnom, do not repent. We read, the sinners of Israel with their bodies and the sinners of the nations of the world with their bodies descend into Gehinnom and are judged there for 12 months. But heretics, informers, and apostates who denied the Torah and denied the resurrection of the dead, their judgment is eternal. Rambam, the Yigdal, the 13 principles, belief in Messiah. He writes in other sources for the Rambam, those who don't believe in the coming of Messiah or actively deny him, they're like heretics who've denied the Torah. They don't have a place. It's important to keep in mind. Please keep in mind it is against everything that you're taught. But Paul's letter was not a doctrinal work intended to speak to the personal salvation of the individual. Pamela Eisenbaum, Paul's letter to the Romans is not an answer to the question, how can I be saved? Rather, it is his answer to the question, how will the world be redeemed, and how can I participate in that redemption? For Paul, the question had great urgency because God had already initiated this process. Because I, like Paul, am a follower of Yeshua, and I believe that God has anointed Yeshua, chosen him as Messiah, the agent of redemption in the world, the bringer of the kingdom, here's what I say. If you want to be in the kingdom, you got to get on board with the king. Okay? Let me just elaborate that. I, like Paul, am firmly persuaded that this saving will involve an allegiance to the Jewish Messiah, who's been revealed as Yeshua, evidenced by his resurrection from the dead. In other words, I am not advocating a two-ways path. There's a word for it in German. It's called Sonderweg, which means a unique path or an alternate path or another way. I quote Paula Fredrickson to explain Sonderweg. Scholars in this movement have urged that Paul was committed to two discrete paths for salvation, Torah for Jews, Christ for Gentiles. The significance of Jesus as Israel's Messiah accordingly shrinks. Jews did not need Christ because they already had Torah. Paul objected to circumcision in this view because Gentiles didn't need it. They, and only they, were saved in Christ. This is Sonderweg. Now, I continue with Fredrickson. Very smart and influential scholars are also Sonderweg scholars and have put together very compelling reasons why they believe this. But I want to continue with Fredrickson's quotes on Sonderweg because of its succinct refutation. First of all, Christ is the Messiah, son of David. That could never be of null import for Israel. Secondly, Paul states that Jews as well as Gentiles are under sin. Third, the blessing of Abraham as the model of pistis, of faith, that is declared, pronounced on the circumcised as well as the uncircumcised. Jesus, God's eschatological champion, he redeems the whole cosmos of which Israel is a part, and probably the central part of the cosmos, however big the cosmos is. Yeshua's return, it coincides with the resurrection of the dead, which is such a Jewish concept and so incredibly important. Paul himself supported the work of James, of Peter, of John, their mission to the Jews, something that would have been nonsensical if he were a Zonderweg believer himself. Paul believed in a kingdom, and as such, given what was happening in the world around him as he traveled, as he wrote, as he spoke, as he observed, the literal sense of will be saved needs to be considered. The literal sense must include the physical, political, social, and spiritual aspects of flourishing on earth. Christian exegetes have often interpreted the verb shall be saved to mean that all in Israel will be admitted to heaven. This is not evident in Paul's discourse and the scriptures that Paul quotes. They all concern the political and social well-being of Israel on earth. It is much better to understand shall be saved to mean that the promised blessings of shalom in the land will be granted to Israel at some time that coincides with the return of the Messiah. Now, that doesn't mean that all Jews will want those blessings, or Gentiles for that matter. Remember the text, even at the gates of Gehinnom, the wicked will not repent. It is conceivable. You could ask, how could that be? How could anyone deny? I don't know how, because it's not me, but it's a possibility. These texts from Jewish thought tell us they're not aligned with the plan of God. Jew or Gentile, they don't want to be a part of it. Okay, fine. You have free will. Don't be a part of it. To summarize all that, Jews need Jesus. No king, no kingdom. This is the kingdom on earth that Yeshua is going to bring, on earth as it is in heaven, by physical, political, social, spiritual, wherever the rule of the king, if someone wants to participate in that kingdom, they must come on board. Now listen, no king, no kingdom, how is that going to work? Does Paul give us the clear plan and description of how all Israel will be saved? Paul doesn't even know. Paul doesn't even know until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. When is that? What does that mean? Paul, and we've talked about this, in some way throughout the book of Romans is working out in his own mind how it is that all these Gentiles are coming in first to the kingdom. They're getting the message so clearly, and his people are not. And one big part, if not the biggest part of Romans, is for Paul to ensure that they don't become arrogant and assume they are replacing God's people. But in all of that, I can only say what I said earlier about Paul. I'm not doubting Paul. I'm certainly not doubting what Paul said. I'm not doubting the inspiration of the Bible or anything. What I'm saying is, it is clear to Paul that God will save Israel. God will remain faithful to his people. It is his righteousness despite their unrighteousness, despite their disobedience. It's happened before. Paul is clear that God will save Israel, but it is still unclear precisely how and when that will happen. for Paul and his imminent theology that said this is happening now. This was imperative. It was so important that as Jews get on board because it's happening. But it didn't happen in his lifetime, or the next generation, or the next. And still the question remains, when will all Israel, or the world for that matter, be saved? And yet, I must quote Mark Reisner, again, a brilliant Gentile Pauline Romans scholar, who writes, "And yet how can Israel come to believe in Jesus? After 2 millennia of our Gentile Christian theology that almost by definition excludes Israel from our view of salvation history." He quotes scholar Levering. He says, Levering's response makes much more sense here. God can save his chosen people through Christ, for their refusal to believe in Christ may easily come from loyalty to tradition, with no intention of rejecting truth, an example of invincible ignorance. Listen, invincible ignorance. It's a theological concept that's often used in Catholic thought to describe a situation where a person is unaware of the truth of the gospel or Christ due to circumstances beyond their control, and their ignorance is not culpable. The ignorance is termed invincible because it cannot be overcome through no fault of the individual. Now, to preempt anyone who would dare criticize me for quoting Catholic theology, let me tell you something. The Catholic Church has done probably more damage to the Jewish people over the course of history than any other church. And they have done more since Nostra Aetate to reconnect the Jewish people to their eternal plan and destiny of God. They have written, they have labored to restore the Jewish people into a place of recognition. So, I wish there were more people who thought like that. It could really do some good in the church, but anyway, let me just say, invincible ignorance. Levering applies this concept to Jewish people, arguing that their refusal to believe in Messiah might stem from a deep loyalty to the Mosaic covenant and the teachings of their tradition. It's not intentional, malicious rejection of the truth, but a situation where they remain unaware of or unconvinced by the gospel due to their cultural and historical circumstances. So I conclude with this. Cultural and historical circumstances. For the last 1975 years, roughly since the writing and reading of Romans in the city of Rome, to urge the new disciples of Jesus, Gentiles, to not become arrogant toward the natural branch, I want you to consider the historical circumstances that have informed the relationship between Jews and Gentiles, and especially the presentation of Jesus as the Messiah. A kingdom has a king, and all subjects must devote themselves to the allegiance to that king. But what if the king is so misrepresented in presentation that he becomes your enemy? I am asked so frequently, why is it that the Jews couldn't see it? Why didn't they get it? It was right there in their eye. Why couldn't they see it? Jesus has not been presented as who he is. Words twisted, Torah ripped from his teaching, became an enemy of the Jews at odds with all of the religious leaders of his time on a mission to create a new religion which put Judaism to death. And how the Bible and the words of Paul, including this book of Romans we've studied, have been used to further deny the validity of Jews and Judaism and covenant and Torah. and the historical atrocities committed against Jews in the name of this king, because they did not accept the presentation given to them. They did not convert. They did not deny their Judaism. These things, my friends, are no provocation to jealousy. Paul desired to see the olive tree, the family of God, bloom with fruit from Israel and the nations. That's what he's writing about. Jews and Gentiles, each celebrated in their unique roles, beautifully prophetic, unique roles, worshiping together the God of Israel, observing his commandments from a place of proper understanding, united under the banner of Messiah. And yet, even today, he envisions something like this. A Messianic community, Jews and Gentiles, united under the banner of Messiah, worshiping together with proper understandings of our unique, covenanted, prophetic roles. And yet, all these years later, we are a minuscule component of Messiah-following human beings. It has not materialized. And Israel, the Jews, we have suffered from before Paul for sure, but most definitely after. My people have suffered. And yet one can easily see that God has continued to protect the people of Israel, even today as anti-Semitism rises, as we have an IDF soldier talking to us about the hell of waking up when people decide they want to murder, butcher human beings because of their Jewish identity. Israel fights to exist. It's as if the protective callus is needed all the more. Redemption has not come, but God remains with his people. And I'm reminded of Mark Twain's famous quote in Harper's Weekly. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, and the Persian rose. They filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Roman followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now or have vanished. The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass away, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? Mark Twain wrote. And Paul answers that question in the book of Romans. Mark, gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. Do Jews need Jesus? I've answered that question here. How will God do it? I don't know. What I do know is that Paul expected that he would. And it was enough for him to know that in God's time, in God's way, we do our part, God does his, and all those who would come alongside God's plan to redeem this world would be saved. If Paul can believe it, if God has demonstrated his faithfulness, and if we believe in God, why shouldn't we? Shabbat Shalom. Let's stand together as a community that represents something beautiful. And together, we pray that God's kingdom would be revealed on earth soon and in our day. Aleinu l'shabech la'adon hakol, latet gedula li'otzeh bereshit, shelo asanu ki goei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot chadamal, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושבי קרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת חיים והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחתנו. ונאמר, וחיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד. On that day, the Lord will be one, and his name will be one as the tree comes together. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you his peace. B'Shem Yeshua. Yivrechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yo'er Adonai ponav elecha v'yihuneka. Yisa Adonai ponav elecha ve'asem lecha. Shabbat Shalom, my friends.